Hello, universe. Hello, YouTubers. This is kind of a red letter day. A lot's happening. My Mac Pro here just decided it had to upgrade itself, so there was those tense moments of a new operating system version. Um, didn't always work in the old days. Knock wood, not cardboard. That's a picture of Bonnie and Alec Navala Lee, Bonnie DeVarco, and the writer author of this new book that we're starting to read on the Trim Tab Book Club about Bucky Fuller. And I thought, in honor of that, it was put on by the BFI. I went through Eventbrite, paid my $10. I was a member for life at one point. I thought as part of the Synergetics Explorer Award. Maybe you guys want to look that up if I'm actually not really a member or am I a member? Because I thought lifetime membership, dang, came with that. That's what I remember. But hey, we get old. We forget things, especially self serving. We get more self serving with age, maybe. That might be the synopsis of this new Fuller book. So, what I'm going to do is go through the slides again. And I'm looking for how do I get to full screen mode, right? Because I want you to, let's see, zoom, actual size. No, enter full screen. Is this good? Okay, I don't mind that we can see a little bit more than just the slides themselves. I think we're in view mode, as good as it gets for Google Slides. And this is, of course, the Climatron in St. Louis. And right, Bucky was not, he was very upper management. You could say almost hands off with regard to a lot of this stuff. Because in my mind, he's the phantom captain of the Grunch, which you can read in a silly way in Grunch of Giants is an entirely bad thing. Oh, evil Grunch, evil capitalism. There's the superficial reading of everything. Superficial. Same with Synergetics. You can skim it, you can like roll your eyes and say, wow, he's a genius, or gosh, this guy's an idiot, or one somewhere in between. But to what extent do we gain understanding of Synergetics before we either dismiss it out of hand or steal from it, which is what I do. I take from it what I can get from it, right? If I completely don't understand something, it's very difficult for me, I don't know about you, to incorporate it. So this is a slideshow where I assist people incorporating into their own thinking some of what's in Synergetics, which is what? Okay, it's Bucky's philosophy. And I think he deserves to be, quote, a philosopher. I put that in quotes because it's a word we fight over a lot. And I've been watching a lot of like YouTubes about Gurdjieff and Ouspensky and stuff like that. And who is it? The Jungian lecturer, much later in time, like a contemporary. And he's saying, gee, he wishes, these thinkers were more accepted and we could talk about them more. Because they're really interesting. And good thing Jungian psychology has got room for them, but then Jungian psychology is always in danger of being pushed off stage entirely, right? These disciplines, they all fight and vie with each other. Who's really an architect? Who's a real mathematician? You can always turn that around. It's like, I would not want to be a mathematician. That would be horrible. The reputation, I couldn't live with that. You see, that's turned around. That's different. Same with architect, whatever. It's like rhetoric, polemics. There is that in Synergetics. He picks fights, but philosophers do that, is what I'm saying. There's a lot of rhetoric. You could say sophistry. And he had help from a slippery guy, Ed Applewhite. Let's call him slippery because he's a professional CIA guy. And, these people are somewhat slippery, let's say. And he's a chief collaborator on this book. So what's going on? Not just with the writing process, but getting it through shepherding it through to getting it actually published. These 2 volumes with all their pictures, and now it's on the web. So that's what I mean by E.J. Applewhite as collaborator. Just checking my slides. It's philosophy. I think I've covered all this, right? How crazy is it? How incomprehensible is it? And if it's comprehensible, is it just trivial? Because that's usually the next thing. Oh, I get it, but you're just, that's just tic-tac-toe. It's like, yeah, we all know that already. So here's the slide that, do we know that already? It's like, this volume, what is it? Now you would, in XYZ math, and we're competent in that, most of us, if you've been to the same schools I've been to and taught the same math I've been taught, then you look at this cube and you say that's obviously got a volume of the second root of 2 to the third power. Or you might just say square root of 2. Square root of 2 to the third power, because one of the edges is. Now I'm just telling you it's a cube. You might be skeptical, but I'm allowed to tell you it's a cube. It's not like you get to get out your ruler and go measure it and say, well, it's really a little off or something. No, this represents a perfect cube, right? And inside of it, inscribed, is a tetrahedron with edges 2. You can get the Pythagorean theorem to show that. So there's nothing very amazing about this picture so far. Nothing very amazing, except it's okay. The fact that the tetrahedron inside the cube is 1/3 its volume, you have to definitely trace it in as diagonals. That's not new. That's nothing Bucky discovered. So what is he claiming to have discovered in this picture? There's nothing new here whatsoever. Well, he's saying this precise exact cube, and here's where I'm going to get into hot water. I've already met people whose blood boils when I talk this way. This is actually Bucky's volume 3 cube. And before you tell me, no, the edge is 2 here, that can't be the volume 3 cube, that's 2 radii. And you're allowed to call a diameter 2 if you want, but that's the diameter between the spheres here. And that is, I'm sorry, a one frequency cube, because we put a cube at diagonals. I'm sorry, we put a sphere at the vertexes of the tetrahedron. Put one sphere at each vertex of the tetrahedron, and you will see that there's one interval. So one frequency, you want to say 0 frequency, don't say 2 frequency. This is not, because then you'll get off on what volume it is. It's 3. This is volume 3. So whatever frequency you need for this to be volume 3. So that was Bucky jargon. And I've lost all the XYZ people because they're still hooked on second root of 2 to the third power. How can this volume be 3? And my whole rant about frequency went over their head. Meant nothing. Okay, so I assert a certain relationship to a sphere packing matrix. This is to make it clear, put them both on the same slide, right? This length here from opposite corner to that opposite corner is the same as the length between two centers of unit radius spheres, which is why we say 2, because 1 plus 1, right? 2. 2 radii, but only one diameter, which you can say equals 2. There's only one diameter. So if you want to think of one interval, that's how we use the word frequency in architecture usually. Fuller started to colonize architecture. He brought the dome in, which they saw as alien. They quickly want the octet truss to belong to Alexander Graham Bell. You know how the mind works. The zeitgeist, it pops up in all these places, but this game of taking credit, so you can have patrons, so you can be a high class, you know what I'm going to say. So, here's what Bucky's doing. He's changing our meaning of 2 to the third power. Second root of 2 to the third power is whatever number it is, but it doesn't relate to that cube the way you think it does, right? That cube would have to have irrational edges to be unit volume in the Bucky world, because the tetrahedron gets to be unit volume. And that's what drives people kind of crazy, because they're not sure that's okay. Is that allowed? And we're waiting. Like, if you're a mathematician, just tell us this is okay, which it is. Excuse me. I can't tell people that it's fine. I can't say no rules are broken here, except as a philosopher. But, my credentials are shaky. I went to Princeton. I studied under Rorty. I've been studying the Bucky stuff a long time, but I'm not a professor of such and such. So you don't have to listen to me. And you don't have to get your meaning of 4D as Fuller comes to it, right? As really the tetrahedron is your most primitive topological shape. And we don't argue anymore about whether height, width, or depth is the primary dimension. They're all equal footing, and you can't add them. You can't take dimension. You can't take space and subtract away a dimension. You can on paper. Linear algebra is fine. You can have as many dimensions as you want in linear algebra. There's machine learning for you, right? But the problem here is people don't want to talk about these basics, because you sound like little kids when you do that. And you're a grown up now. And when you're a little kid, they kick the S out of you to make sure you conform and agree to their way of thinking. And then by the time you're older, you have a real job and you're busy. You don't have time to go back to that, unless maybe you're a philosopher. But that's dangerous because you can sound very childlike to the verge of childish when you debate, do we really have to use a cube for unit volume? Can the edges of a tetrahedron both be one, all edges one, and the volume of the tetrahedron still be one? Can we do that? Is that allowed? Is that going to be permitted? The cost is the cube of edges one is no longer volume one. That's the cost. But we're not saying, oh, you're going to switch over now. We're going to have this big revolution where we all abandon the cube. No. It's just another thing that any math book should include. It's just another footnote in history that Fuller had this way of doing area and volume that's different. And what you make of it and how you want to use that, that's really up to you. But to not teach that this is what happens, right? To not tell history. It's not a math thing, it's a history thing. So there's your tetrahedron 1, cube 3 we talked about, volume 6, space filler, and volume 4. That would be so easy to teach, wouldn't it? If little kids were involved. You wouldn't want to abuse them, though, if this wasn't true, right? So you got to figure that out. You have a time limit. Tick, 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 tick. Okay, enough pressure. So I've been doing this for a while. There's the poster on the left, the beans on the right. Don't use cornmeal. Little kids get it. They love to pour these back and forth. This should have been a Montessori kit decades ago. What happened? How did we get so dumb? A modules, B modules, easy to explain, same volume. There's still base times height gives you a number. There's still all these computations from XYZ that are left over. But to get over the hump, you have to realize that triangles and tetrahedrons are treated differently now. So you don't just do 1/2 base times height. And there's a lot of thought that we'll have to go into completing this and getting it more, ship shape, I guess. But since when was that not a privilege? That's a fun thing to do. We want to do things like that. This was a very promising beginning. It's like a launch pad with a rocket, a start button, the button's been pushed, the rocket's already going, and you're like, well, okay, but let's do something else. So I'm here to try to say, all this jargon, might, coupler, so that's a unit volume in my hand there. That coupler there, that fills space, and it has the same volume as the unit tetrahedron. We've got all the toys we need. I'm holding a toy, if you don't notice. So I'm being polemical because I'm saying, really, I'm just interested in the math now, and so Fuller's personal life, that can wait. I really only care about this kind of stuff because it influences architecture, philosophy, art. It's either Platonic and true, or Fuller made some serious errors mathematically, and we really can't be doing any of this. This really can't be done, what I'm trying to do here. But it seems to work. It seems to work really well. So if you dive into Synergetics, you find there's 2 rhombic tricondahedra that are fun to think about. There's the one that precisely wraps the unit radius sphere, precisely. So all the crisscross diamond centers are tangent to that unit radius sphere inside. What is the volume of this RT? Well, first of all, we're talking tetravolumes. So the tetrahedron with edges D, i.e. 2R, is unit. Well, it's a little more than 5. I'm sorry to say, not exactly 5. How much would you have to shrink this RT to get it to be exactly 5 tetravolumes? And Fuller actually does those computations, and I have them here. That's what this is about. And it turns out to be a very, very tiny, thin film difference, which you don't sweep under the rug. You make a big deal out of. And you say, wow, in this sort of Platonic sculpture, we have this crack here of 0.9994833. It's really interesting. stuff. So math papers could be written, but Fuller is written off because he's just making hippies go wow with his stupid New Age stuff, and therefore they don't really appreciate us as much because they're still listening to him, even though he's gone. It's like there's a lot of resentment towards Fuller because of how popular he was. And we got to like get to the bottom of that and disabuse people of his like magic. But really, if you want to do that, you need to tell us why the S module here is not interesting. And the fact that its ratio to the E is the same as the cube octahedron to the icosahedron, stuff like that. Martin Gardner kind of stuff, right? Scientific American kind of stuff. But from the 70s, right? Where's the continuity? How come? Couldn't have anything to do with politics, could it? Like, did Fuller have the wrong politics? Is that what this is about? Is that why we don't learn any of this stuff? Is it just really not about the math? It's all about the politics. Well, I'm here to share the math. So this was Gerald de Jong's alternative volume formula, but there's a bunch of them, right? There's Pico della Francesca. There's the Cayley-Menger determinant. And if you go in and tweak those, then you can get tetravolumes from any tetrahedron. Just give it the 6 lengths, feed them in the right order, and voila, there's your tetravolume. And they're very nice formulas. And you can code Python around it, and you can just feed in the 6 edge links of the S module using the plain net in Synergetics and get back its volume. And add those 24 of those S modules to the inscribed icosahedron inside the volume 4 octahedron and do some fun dissections that way. It's not that big a deal, right? Just take your place in line along with all the other dissections that are going on, right? It's not just A and B modules and mites. So if you're a promulgator of somebody else's way of dissecting something, more power to you, right? It's a big playing field. We just happen to have this one way here. So there's the sphere packing connection. This is the Alexander Graham Bell thing. This is the octet truss that we're looking at. If you're a mathematician, you're like, how could you patent such a thing? But people say, oh no, Alexander Graham Bell really invented it. Are you kidding me? This is the universe we're talking about. Humans don't invent anything. I think maybe we should just take that as a polemical position. Patents are 100% fraudulent because all this stuff just comes to them. They think really hard, but they don't know how they get it. They didn't invent their own thinking. They're not original. They're just one more human that's completely inventive and always coming up with genius ideas. That's your average human, folks. The fact that you have a patent means zero, right? There's kids starving in Calcutta. They're all Ramanujans, but you just want them to starve so you don't have the competition. That's what's really going on. So all patents are void. They're all, BS, You could take that as a polemical position if you wanted to. It wouldn't sound Western civilization-y, but why should it, right? I don't see a point to perpetuating all intellectual property law. And I say that as someone who's very friendly to the grunge sometimes. And if you don't know what grunge is, you obviously haven't read your Fuller yet, but maybe you will. All right, oh yeah, here's Alexander Graham Bell, right? Was this ever something we wanted to hide? Are we like making a secret out of the fact that he also came up with this omnigeometry or whatever? Absolutely not. Fuller was as surprised as anybody to find that out, right? And the dome, of course, it's popped up before. Of course, the geodesic dome has popped up in nature. And here, beautiful Sam Lanahan's version of the flextegrity comes in several versions. Book about it, more than one. Museums, exhibits, galleries, all this stuff. Does anybody pay attention? No, they have no context for it. All this stuff is too alien, just too alien. So I call what I do Martian math. So there's your XYZ coordinate system with the 6 spokes to the corners of an octahedron. Here's your caltrop coordinate system or quadrays to the corners of the tetrahedron, like the methane atom. And you can do math with either one as your basis. And it's interesting. Doing quadrays, that's an interesting topic. Anybody else interested? It's in Wikipedia. It's got multiple authors. It used to be at the math forum until this whole site got totally trashed. Totally trashed. And what's the story behind that? Anybody? Anybody interested? I don't know. Maybe not. Oh, this is on the web already. There's Wikipedia. So we talk a lot about Bucky having an interest in the fourth spatial dimension, not time. He was into 4D, four spatial dimensions, and people are, well, how can you do that? You know, it's one dimension, two dimensions, three dimensions, right? If that's 89 degrees, is it broken? It's not a dimension? No, you can, well, what can you do to make dimensions? Do they really have to be right angles? Already we're talking like kids again, and it's like there's no one here to beat it out of us if we get it wrong, so we might get it wrong. We might end up where Bucky ended up, with a coordinate system and a different way of thinking, and ooh, somebody got through the defenses. Bucky got through the defenses. So anyway, he dedicated Synergetics to Coxeter here. And Coxeter is very clear that his 4D is, I would say, spatial. There's force, machine learning, linear algebra, all the dimensions are spatial, we say. There's no time sticking its head out and being different and having a different way of doing the algebra around time. That's Einstein stuff. That's Minkowski space. And everyone confuses this. Do not let any journalist confuse those two, and you'll be way ahead. And then Bucky's something different. He's got 4D, meaning the tetrahedron at the end of the day. Everything boils down to space is a priori space. Can you just imagine yourself just non-dimensional? How about one-dimensional? How do you get to be a piece of spaghetti or something? How do you get to be infinitely thin? How does anything get to be that way? You think you're imagining a piece of spaghetti, but you're looking at it. You're outside of it looking at it. Uh-oh. You're already in space. You already blew it. You blew it. You can't think in two dimensions. You're thinking a sheet of paper with an ant on it. Garbage. Total garbage. Of course, it works. You can make a game out of it. Chess is garbage. Checkers is garbage. It's just an epithet at this point. I'm just saying there are lots of ways to make garbage. Zen is garbage. So you can multiply this way if you want. You can do two edges, one of 4, one of 3. They multiply, they give you 12. 12 what? 12 unit triangles. Ooh, different Martian math. You can do the same thing with tetrahedrons, and I have some pretty good pictures of that. Right? We get into the synergetics constant, how to go back and forth between these two ways of doing volume. So now you kind of understand what the math was that Fuller was into since the 50s and before, right? So this is what we want to learn about and understand. And the main question is, why is there so little secondary literature since the 1970s? That's the only main question, really. Everything else is a footnote. What's the holdup? What's the blockage? Because it makes perfectly fine sense in a mathematical sense. That's not a problem. The Martian math is here to stay. So I think it's just political. I think there's a lot of political resistance to breaking a lot of rules and teaching a lot of different things in math. You shouldn't do that. That's not what we learned. You know, we'll still teach the old stuff. I still teach X, Y, Z, cosine and sine, exponential function. I love to teach normal math. And this stuff's a little abnormal. I'm okay with that. It's a little kind of weird. So what? It's part of history, and we don't want to just sweep it under the rug. All right? Because it's a very important part of history. Fuller was bringing us a positive message. And to just put it back on him, it's like, well, you had too many girlfriends. You know, we talk to philosophers about whether it means anything, right? Like whether this philosophy holds any weight. And the question is, no, maybe not. It's kind of lightweight in this case. It's kind of funny. It's got a comic at the end. We salute to Applewhite. And so here's like the Grunch, brought to you by the Grunch. We're happy. We're happy that you got through this. And now maybe you want to go out and preach the gospel. Be an acolyte, right? Or you can just be a cube head. You can preach the gospel of the cube and broach no competition and think you're being brave. Think you're the hero. Ha ha ha. Think you're the hero. Give me another one. Give me another joke. So that's polemics, right? Rhetoric. You got to put that in philosophy. It's like debating, right? You win or you lose points with the judges when you do that stuff. But let people know where you're coming from. And don't just take it sitting down that since the 1970s, we have Amy's Fuller explanation. Okay, so that's the book everyone reads, and then we're done. There's no more syllabus. They might look at my website or these videos, but you're so tiny numbered, you don't even matter. You do not matter. I'm just insulting my audience here. But why is that? Why is that it's up to weirdos like me with a hat to talk about such obvious basic stuff that's so interesting mathematically? I think it's political. What do you think? And I think the grunge is not on your side. If you want to keep it under the rug, good luck. All right. Talk to you soon.